for communications, which maybe we should have started with and got to actions,
Yeah.
but I just love this quote. I'll just read this first before we like the quote on the side here. Do you want to vent or do you want advice? Just learning now, after 40 years on Earth, this might be the most important question to ask whenever a friend or loved one is upset. And I just think this has been so powerful for me in the last 10 years, maybe to uh, communicate back to very well meaning friends and family sometimes that I really often just want to vent. It's my personality to need to share into space and not quite being ready yet for fixing.
Yeah.
So I just love that quote and just wanted to read it. But uh, yeah,
Yeah, I can totally relate to that quote. And I feel like I've said something similar to people in my life recently. And I'm not sure if it's just because of I feel like we're kind of have limited hours of the day where we are wakeful and it's kind of, in different segments. So I know for me personally, I feel like, I kind of have to take advantage of that time. And so, sometimes when I'm just trying to have, a lighthearted conversation and just kind of share what's going on about me, like I don't need a list of, okay, well, let's, do this. And okay, well, who can we do for this? I'm like, no, like I'm just telling you what's going on. Like I can't take on more. I'm just, letting you know what's going on. So I think this quote is a perfect way for me to communicate that in a more kind of concise way, because that's definitely been a struggle for, I think, just anyone in my life that actually just, loves me and wants to, help. But, sometimes you just need to vent. um, Allowing for sadness has definitely been something that I have leaned into a lot. And I think, especially, just, having, I think, this community and knowing that I'm not alone in it, I think has made it easier for me to kind of lean into the sadness without feeling, like I'm overreacting or, I'm going to be, judged, because it really kind of, I think, yeah, it really sucks. And like Julie thinks it sucks too. And like, so does Anne's daughter. And like, sometimes I just need to like, it's like it sucks sometimes. And then other times, you get to do cool things like this, which is great. But I think just knowing that, it sucks and, there's not really a bright side to narcolepsy. You can't just like, do mindfulness out of your way. You can't just, get a bunch of crystals. I mean, everything is great enhancements. But I think in terms of, people, I think the people that I've stayed closest to since my diagnosis have been definitely the people that I've just naturally felt comfortable being able to ask for help with, being able to be sad with without having to think twice about how they may perceive it. Because it's just easier. It's a load off of me. And it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of the comfort in having those open friendships has just been a big blessing for me.
That's why social support is so important.
Yeah.
So important. Well, when you're talking about about the fixing versus the listening, Lauren,
Yeah.
I'm the parent, and it's just, as a parent, we just want to fix things. Okay, you're hurting. Okay, what can I do to fix it? And I feel sometimes, because I'm a nurse, I'm like, okay, yeah, well, I kind of know at least how some of the healthcare system is working. So there's some things I should be able to fix. And so I'm really working on to, I wonder if I should just listen and not say a word. And sometimes she'll just say to me, I'm just going to say something. You don't really have to answer me. Okay. And then you just sit with it. But then you, as the one that are listening, you also have to figure out, where do you then put what you're now getting, right?
Yeah.
Can I just filtrate it out? And then, but for me, the social support is everything. What I'm getting through all of these groups is crucially important, because it can be so isolating otherwise.
And I remember you said something too before about being a nurse, and there was something that you sometimes say to patients that always stuck with me, when maybe you couldn't solve anything, but you would say something effective. I'm sitting with you.
I'll just sit with you.
Mm-hmm. And it actually comes from a place of daring to be present in a maybe otherwise uncomfortable situation, but just that another human being will sit with you just reduces your isolation instantaneously. So sometimes you might not have any good words, any band-aids to put on. So it could just be, I can see that you're upset. I'll sit here with you. Yeah. And then that's just it.
And it does make all the difference from someone that's been sat with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'll just add the last one I added, that avoid the temptation to make it about you. We have a quote here on this next one, which goes to this point very well. When life gives you lemons, I won't tell you a story about my cousin's friend who died of lemons. We all have such a desire to connect with each other. And anytime, having had my dad pass away, this is probably the example for me where it mostly comes up. When someone else says something about having a dad pass away, my instant, I want to be like, me too. But it's very hard, but I've learned to stay present with someone and not make it about me, and stay present with them based on my understanding of having that, but about keeping about them and not transferring it back to my own experience or my cousin's friend's experience, or trying to relate in that way. It can sometimes feel very, it can switch it, away from supporting someone that's having that moment of desiring their support, and not supporting you back, or learning about your cousin's friend, or anything like that. So I just thought that was a good quote about that, and a good reminder.
Mm-hmm.
So because we still have so much to get to. So communications about things to say.
I love these. How are you feeling?
Mm-hmm.
If you need a break or a nap, these are all so great. I remember doing. So what I prefer how are you feeling, rather than are you okay? Personally, that's kind of, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just a little tick that I have, because generally, am I okay? No, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. I'm, in pain. I feel weak. I can't see straight, but how am I feeling? I feel just allows for such a broader share of, positive, emotions. How am I feeling? I'm feeling so happy that I'm on this Zoom. I'm feeling, great that I'm, have this, ice cold drink right now. I'm feeling great that there's sunshine. And then, you can also be and I'm also, feeling, kind of fatigued. But I just think, are you okay? It just seems not as, honestly, it just doesn't seem as compassionate, in my opinion, as wanting to know the whole spectrum of what's going on, because I can't answer that in a yes or no question, or, in a good or bad sort of way. I think, these supports of just, being able to, offer, if you need anything, this is available for you, instead of just saying hey, hey, you should go do this. Because I think sometimes people try to be really, they try to be, really helpful, but sometimes they may overstep a little bit, instead of, be hey, go take your nap in there, instead of just, offering, what's going on. And then I can, use my own sense to feel what's going on with my body, to use the resource that's, very generously given. I'm very grateful for. And then also just, acknowledging that you don't really know what to say, but you want to be good. That's an amazing, honest, supportive thing to say to someone. It's just, I feel it really also goes with the just sitting with you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've done the mistake as a mom to say, good morning, how did you sleep? And that's not such a good thing. And the answer most of the time is, I have a sleep disorder. What do you expect? Oh, yes, that's right. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But you learn from your mistakes, right? But
Well, that's
Yeah.
probably good practice. I feel like people talk about sleep in the workplace. When I was working full time outside of this job, and people are like, "Oh, I didn't sleep well last night. I'm so tired." And I honestly, I have found that
yeah,
I can't act at work, especially how I feel. So I would just often be like, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear about that," and
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
have to sit there and then explain to this random person over coffee pot,
Right.
like, "Well, you should try my experience," because everyone's experience is valid. But
it
it
is.
always, there's
It
just
is.
this extra little like, about sleep,
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
I know. I know.
All right,
Everything
let's
is
keep
relative.
going. We got so much. We got so much. So, Lauren, we had this here.
Yeah, I think
Definitely,
we
you would
kind
love
of,
that.
yeah, I think we kind of get, oh, yeah. And then this one, you're so lucky you get to take naps. Like, it's just kind of, I feel like there are some things that are almost like, word vomit when people are trying to connect with you about, what's going on. And you're like, I have narcolepsy, I have to take, prescription naps. Like, instead of like hearing you have a neurological disorder that, takes away time from your day because you need to go rest, like somehow they hear like, oh, you get to take a nap. Like,
Yes.
no. So I think that also is just kind of, goes to the more like, are you actually listening and absorbing to what I'm saying, or are you just like waiting to say something positive?
Man, there's the quote of the day. Sorry, I was just like, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think, that's the, you know, I think we feel
When
like
not to
we
talk.
kind of covered a lot of these, but Anne, I feel
Yeah.
like the one not to talk, that's a good one. I feel like you had some
And then there's
good
days where
experiences.
and then there's days where you feel like you have the energy to explain it to everybody. I have often heard if Josephine has been sleeping in my lap out in a public space, it's been, oh my gosh, that must be so nice just to be able to fall asleep, even though that you're out with so much noise. Or oh wow, she's just sleep dozing away. Isn't that something? And then there are days where you want to say something, and then there's days where you just don't have the energy, and you just smile and wave, and you're like, okay, whatever, And I think that's okay too, because you can't. I can't be teaching every day, and you have to also choose your battles, and then you just smile and okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But
I think probably like I feel like having a mom like you and then having a mom like I have, I know for me in a situation like that, there's definitely times to bite your own tongue, but then from, the I guess the daughter patient perspective, at the same time, I know that, in the right context, my mom would also, open her mouth and say something if it needed to be said. So
yeah,
there's definitely, I think just being able to kind of know your support system has your back, even if they can't constantly fight your battles.
Yeah. We kind of talked about this, I think, when not to talk, not after a nap,
After a nap, not on just waking up.
not late at night for most
Yeah, not
people,
without.
not too early in the morning. So a lot of things, but let's just keep going because we still have a lot here. Lauren, you had found this really great graphic.
Yeah. I feel like we could kind of even go through it kind of quick because I kind of talked about it more when I was talking about the kind of how are you feeling. But I think just being able to check in just on a, more, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Just at I guess at a more like compassionate level and direct. So, how are you feeling today? Really, physically, mentally, what's taking up the most headspace in your head right now? And I think even in addition to that, you could even, follow that up with, is there anything I can, help take off your plate? Like that's always, really nice for me to hear. You know, how have you been sleeping? I know that's kind of, definitely like, it's never great, but there's definitely sometimes waves where it's kind of like, oh, like last night, like, 0 hours as opposed to, when I get, a day like this where like it still wasn't great, but I'm, definitely, closed my eyes and reopened them hours later. So I do think that there's a way to kind of ask about someone's sleep routine, if you're definitely more aware of how it actually, affects them and their routines. But, what are you grateful for? What's something we can do together? What's something you're looking forward to? What did you do today that made you feel good? I think that's something that, I even try to ask myself, every
Yeah,
day, is just
yeah,
kind of a
we
check-in
all
of
should.
just, yeah, like, okay, what's the joy? What made today, like, really worth it? And I think as someone that, has a, chronic illness like this, like it is really important to kind of check in and make sure that, okay, yeah, like this day was great. Like, I wouldn't want to not have this day. And like, okay, tomorrow, this is something. So, because the mental health, part, like, feeling the sadness at all, like it definitely, um, it can't not affect, you know, your self-worth, your, loneliness, your socialness. So I think just being
Mm.
able to keep it in check and keep it in perspective. And then, if there's times where there's nothing that made you feel good that day, and you maybe have a couple of those days in a row, like, maybe like alert, if you're, living at home, alert, one of your friends, your family members, if like you have a therapist, if maybe it's time to, seek a therapist, some of the support groups. But I think, just even having that kind of, check in with yourself can,
Mhm.
you know, put you in touch of more of the times when you more need support, and the support's
Yeah,
there.
yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, let's get to supporting the supporters, because I think every relationship's a little bit more complex. There's somewhat of we've kind of made an assumption through this that, that's one role or the other that we each play. So sometimes we all are also supporting other people. But when we do think about this, as far as the people that are taking on some more of the caregiving, Anne, do you want to talk about how you manage? Because it sounds like you're a super mom doing quite a bit, and I'm ready for my binder after you finish Josephine's binder. But what
I
do you do to
know
support yourself?
it's on the list. I'm not a super mom. I'm a human being with a million flaws like everybody else. I'm a work in progress. I'm working a lot on, and have been working on for many years, to remember to take care of myself too. And I think it's important to pinpoint that, because nobody here is a superhuman, and humans have flaws, and I have as much physical and mental health like everybody else too. I try to, I kind of, and I've nearly always been like that. Once I kind of get to 8 p.m., it's kind of like my clock goes out. I have nothing more to give. And my family kind of knows that too. So I can do most of all my good advocacy and fighting for my kids and my loved ones during the day. But once I get hit like 8 o'clock, I just can't do anymore. So like I said, the garden work is something that's really important for me. But for me, sleep is super, super important. I have to be in bed by no later than like 9:30, at the latest, maybe 10. But sleep has always been super important for me, but even more so now. When my chambers are empty of supporting everybody else, I have to really remember to get my own good sleep. Otherwise, I can't. And you never know what the next day is gonna bring, right? So that's that uncertainty. I have some really, really good friends that I can talk to, and so that helps a lot too. And getting fresh air, and remember to get some sunshine, and eat healthy and all those good things. But I think it's also important, and I do that regularly with myself, and I tell myself, you've done good today. And that's not because I want to speak myself up or pat myself on the shoulder or anything. It's just that I reached the goal. If it was the doctor's appointment, I got what I wanted, and now I can see improvement. Great. So that works. And then I just stop up for a little bit and smell the coffee on that one, because that's important. I know there's many, many, many more steps ahead. And then I do, like you told me to, Julie, not to look too much ahead. into the future and just deal with the here and now. For me, and I know it's coming on the next slide, I needed to kind of early on find out what can I do that can help other families, because I realized that Josephine was lucky that it only took maybe 3 to 4 years for her to get a diagnosis. But all the years leading up to it, there was other things in the school system that I had to advocate for. And I just cannot, and I still have nightmares about this, thinking about how many children that are sitting in the lower education school systems that potentially have narcolepsy, but is just being labeled with all kinds of other diagnoses. So I'm hoping that the more I learn and the more I can advocate into the public space, that I can hope to bring about some kind of change. And the picture that you see there is I went with Julie and with Project Sleep and a whole bunch of other super brave advocates and scientists and healthcare providers to Capitol Hill 2 times to advocate. And that has just brought me so much gratitude and empowerment. The feeling that telling my family stories can bring about change made it just filled my inner bucket so much and made me feel so incredibly empowered. And I believe, and I've met that in healthcare too, other caregivers and supporters of all kinds of other diseases, they feel the same way. If you can do something where you know you can bring change, there was people before me, all the work that you have done, Julie, you made a path that I'm now walking on. So it's my job to continue that path and to make it wider and include more people. So, and then I also really hope that when Josephine becomes an adult, that she knows that all of you and this wonderful supportive environment of other sleep advocates and people living with narcolepsy, they're going to be there for her. And so it's really important for me that part of my upbringing of her and giving her the advocacy and the power for her to continue a life living with narcolepsy, because currently with no cures, this is probably going to be her trajectory for the rest of her life. There's a group of people out there that's going to help her. They're going to help her also professionally. And so I hope that my work will help her and it will help everybody else that are not diagnosed yet.
Thank you. I know.
When you say you're not a superhero, yeah. I object.
I thank you for saying that about the advocacy, and I think a lot of people, some parents that approach Project Sleep really knew after the diagnosis. I always also try to have people recognize that first to take care of their own family a little bit before doing some of the public advocacy, because, that anger, but hold on to that anger. Don't hold on to it, but I mean, that we can leverage that into action, that but to take care of themselves first and their own family and their own situation as much as they can. And then advocacy will always be there. So don't worry if you missed our most recent action alert, it'll be next year. And so some of these things these opportunities will be there. And I love hearing how much those have meant to you. And so, and Lauren has gotten involved in our advocacy and made a big difference there. Most recently with our letter, getting her member of Congress signed on as well. And I know also that first point was something from your experience, Lauren, the deep breathing.
Yeah, so the deep breathing, I've gotten into just kind of taking a deep breath and holding it in and then letting it out. And it really does kind of help, center myself. Even, it's funny, Anne's been talking about, gardening, and I've also kind of gotten into a technique called grounding. So, I go outside and, take my shoes off, when I lived in the city, I couldn't do this. So here I take advantage outside of my parents because, we have a backyard of, grass. So, just kind of, stand in the grass, take some deep breaths in the fresh air. And it really does, for me, it really does. I feel like just kind of, especially if I'm having a really foggy moment, just kind of centers me and kind of at least gets me to be able to figure out what the next task is, what needs to be done, stop myself from, snapping at someone because of, my own, sleepiness, and just,
Was there
taking
something
a
about,
deep breath. And it's something that I learned from my mother.
wasn't there a little bit of a
Yeah.
story there that she wanted to make sure you knew she wasn't sighing at you or something?
Oh, yeah. So when I was growing up, my mom, was, she's always been, someone that's, taken deep breaths, it's just something that she's done to, de-stress herself. She's definitely, ahead of the curve, I feel like, on, all of the, yogi trends. This is just, I don't know if, she learned from my grandmother, who may be on here this live, but, it's always a part of, her own self-care routine. And I think maybe I was probably like a teenager. And at some point, I finally just said, like, well, why do you always do that? Like, I feel like you're like, are you going like, ugh, like, kind of like, I'm like, are you upset with me? Did I do something annoying? And she's like, no, I'm just, doing deep breathing. Like, it helps like calm me. And, just kind of, took it. I was like, okay, interesting, good to know. Probably, 10 years later, I'm in, physical therapy. And, my physical therapist, she's like, you're just very tense. You need to, relax, calm down. Like, you're clenching your teeth. Everything's just, tensed up. You need to work on deep breathing. And I started hysterically laughing. She's like, what's so funny about that? And I'm like, of course, my mom has, been doing it my whole life. And I thought it was, this like little quirk that she had. But, turns out it's, scientifically proven, free, way to calm your nervous system. So the deep breathing, a trick I learned from, my supporter, and a good funny story behind it.
Thank you guys. I think, let's see, Lauren. Oh, do you want to check in with what people have been saying online?
Yeah. So Lauren T, your grandma Juanita is here. I don't know if it's the grandma,
Yeah,
but
that's my grandma. Yep, that's her.
And a lot of people are just expressing appreciation for everything that audience members and Ann and Lauren and Julie have been sharing. And Rochelle is curious to know how others show gratitude for the support of their loved ones, to let them know that we see how difficult it can be and that we appreciate them.
I just say it often. I feel like I'm, often just, saying thank you. I did actually make my family dinner recently, after I, had, definitely a rough go of it, and they were, all hands on deck. And when I was starting to feel a little better, I made them, made them a nice dinner, just kind of show my appreciation.
What'd you make?
Oh, I'll have to send you the recipe. It was like a TikTok viral pasta. But it was delicious. It was like a penne vodka, but no dairy. It was delicious. And very easy and like very minimal ingredients. But yeah, I've obviously given them all crystals. But I think I just say it a lot, and especially for my friends that I am not, obviously I feel like I'm not as responsive probably as the neurotypical person is, in terms of getting back to messages and everything. I just don't have enough spoons in the day to get back to everyone, and do all the things I need to do. So when I am following up with friends, if I hadn't responded to their message in a couple of days or weeks, have you when I do follow up, I just say I appreciate you you always reaching out. Like, thank you for understanding, that, I can't always, respond right away. Like, obviously, I missed that, lunch date, what about this day? And just kind of, taking ownership, but also not, blaming myself, and then like thanking them for like, still wanting to, be a part of, the LT game.
I know for me, I often feel like when parents reach out to me with their kids with narcolepsy, and I just try to always thank them because, and just say that thank them for their support, because I don't know if young adults are always as good at recognizing when they do have a parent that is, you know, looking to find more resources through reaching out to Project Sleep, and just telling those parents like, you're already doing such a great job, because when you're looking for resources, it shows me that you care in a certain way that is not everyone has that. So I try to like thank other people's supporters. I don't know how much I actually do that on a regular basis with my own supporters. So that's a great question, Rochelle. And I don't think I have a great, I don't think there's like supporter day, day to thank supporters.
Right.
We should.
Yeah.
Great question. Anything else that we have? I know we're way over time. Anything else over on the coming in online or?
A few people shared what they do to say thank you. Taylor says she's not always best at saying the right thing in the moment, so she'll often text after to say how much something meant to her. Also giving a special thoughtful gift. She's done a photo book and a custom blanket. Wow, has been a big way for her to show her love. And other people just try to remember to say, express their love and talk to their supporters regularly. Curly always says she's sorry after she has a snappy moment, and agrees that we should have that day.
Hi, Curly.
That's very, very sweet.
Oh, so this is, I added this, we didn't have this slide before, but I just wanted to remind everyone, a friendly reminder that, kind of what we've been talking about is that a lot of this is too heavy to carry alone, and to just reinforce through all of this that you deserve support. And we hope you feel that, but also to remind everyone that despite your best efforts, some people may not get it. And so it's not your fault if that happens. We all probably experience that to some degree in our lives in different ways. And I know that was, even myself, I think you think, oh, Julie, she wrote a book. She knows how to communicate. And I've had some family members say that I don't communicate very well about my narcolepsy. So, or not always that we can get everyone to get it. And that finding people who do get it will be invaluable. And often, sometimes that's other people with narcolepsy in this community. So, and I think Lauren Thomas has already spoken to this as far as that we still have people in our life that we just watch Grey's Anatomy with, or, some people for me that love dancing, and we can just dance together, and that's wonderful. And then we have this other community of people who do understand. And
we also like to dance.
Well, that's true. We also both like to dance. Why haven't we even been dancing? Oh my God. So just a reminder, and then a picture of Lauren and our Michelle.
Yeah,
it's so cute.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry. Anything else there?
No, that's just it. Would the sign say, if you can't see it, it says, my friend has narcolepsy. My friend has narcolepsy. So that was our World Narcolepsy Day photo shoot.
Love it. Love it.
I got connected through Michelle, who happens to live, just 5 minutes away from me through Project Sleep.
You.
So that's been really exciting to, meet an online friend IRL.
Yeah.
And then, really hit it off.
That's awesome.
Someday, Lauren, I'll get to meet you in real life. I know it.
Right. I just feel like we already it's weird.
It is.
We hang out all the time.
Exactly. So just some resources. We just always like to remind people of the different organizations that are out there. Project Sleep is one of them, but there are other great nonprofits doing incredible, important work as well. So We'll always put these in our resource guide. And for international organizations, please also check our World Narcolepsy Day webpage, has 27 different organizations around the world. And this is just one, I'd love to hear if people have other ones, but this is a book specifically that I think can be helpful. It's called There Is No Good Card for This. And it talks a lot of different kinds of adversity. And for me, it also talks about infertility, which was something that some of my friends have gone through. And I thought that was helpful for me. So there's a lot of different kinds of adversity talked about in this book, including illness and loss and of different kinds. So I think that's a great book. And that card is also by the same artist, Emily McDowell, the Life Gives You Lemons card. So just wanted to mention that. Lauren O had also thought of this, that there's a technique called nonviolent communications technique, and there's a lot of resources online about it. And it goes to some of what we've been talking about, but can help people communicate in different, possibly healthier ways. So we're not going to talk about it too much, but if you want to look that up, you can look up more resources about nonviolent communication technique. And I think that's it. So we just wanted to remind people we have the toolkit coming out in the next couple of weeks, and that we will have our next Nerd Alert broadcast on May 26th. And it's going to be called Narcolepsy Goes to Hollywood. So we'll be talking about portrayals of narcolepsy in the entertainment industry. And Lauren's giving that a thumbs down.
Well, just about the portrayals, not the Nerd Alert.
But it's really great. I know we're going to have, I believe, Anna Marr join us, who is a comedian and creator who's working on creating a series about her experience being a comedian with narcolepsy. And we'll have a lot to talk about. And I don't know if we'll have other guests as well, but really excited about that. And yeah, is there anything else that we should add at this point?
No, thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much,
we're like the
Julie.
dream team, dynamic duo.
I know, Lauren. I can't wait to meet you in person, and I'll take one of your meals.
Of course, yes. I'll send all the recipes, and if I can send it, may be able to make it to Virginia.
I can come to New York too. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm coming for Thanksgiving someday at the Thomas house.
Still, yeah.
It'll happen.
Where I got matching pajamas for Christmas too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys, and thanks for everyone who tuned in. That's the support. Your support of us also is very, very meaningful. This community shows up for each other in a way that is so deeply special. So thanks for everyone for tuning in. That is a gift to all of us, and to me, and I know to our panelists. So, and thank you,
thanks,
Lauren. So thanks to our esteemed guests and Lauren Oglesby for managing the back end of what's happening online. And we'll see you again next month, guys.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Let's see if I can. All right, bye for now, everybody.